How do you survive a match that refuses to end? A match where every game feels like it could flip the entire story. Because that's exactly what Alex Eala just went through at Indian Wells. One moment she looked in control, the next moment she looked like the match might slip away, and then suddenly, with the pressure at its absolute peak, the 20-year-old Filipina did something that only the toughest competitors can do on a tennis court. She found a way. And if you think this was just another early round match at the BNP Paribas Open, think again, because what happened against Diana Yastremska might actually reveal something much bigger about Alex Eala's future on the WTA Tour. But here's the twist. This story doesn't end with that victory, because waiting in the next round is Coco Gauff. And if you watched their last meeting earlier this season, you know exactly why that matchup suddenly feels a lot more interesting. So, let's rewind to how this dramatic moment even started. Indian Wells is not an easy place to prove yourself. Players call it the fifth Grand Slam for a reason. The desert conditions, the slower hard courts, the huge stadiums, everything about this tournament tests a player's patience, discipline, and mental strength. And for Alex Eala, this tournament came with a completely different kind of pressure. For the first time in a WTA 1000 event, she wasn't entering the draw as an underdog wild card or a qualifier trying to make a name for herself. She was a seeded player. That might not sound dramatic on the surface, but in tennis terms, it changes everything. Suddenly, the expectations are different. Suddenly, you're the player people expect to win, and sometimes that's a harder role to play. Her opponent Diana Yastremska is exactly the type of player who can make life uncomfortable on a tennis court. If you've watched Yastremska play before, you know the style. Huge ground strokes, aggressive returns, big serving risks. She's the kind of player who can either blow you off the court or hand you the match with mistakes. And that unpredictable style turned this match into a roller coaster. Right from the opening games, it was obvious this wasn't going to be straightforward. Both players came out trading breaks, neither one able to settle into a rhythm. The rallies quickly turned into a tactical battle from the baseline. Yastremska was trying to overpower points with her flat ground strokes, stepping inside the baseline whenever she could. Eala had a different plan. Instead of trying to match power with power, she started using angles. She moved the ball around the court, and more importantly, she leaned on what many tennis analysts believe is already one of the cleanest shots in her game, her two-handed backhand. Again and again, she redirected pace off that wing, forcing Yastremska to hit one more shot than she wanted. By the middle of the set, the scoreboard reflected how tight things were. 3 games each, and this is where things got interesting. Eala started to look like she was gaining control. She broke serve and pushed ahead to 5-3. For a young player in a big tournament, that's exactly the moment where closing the set quickly can change the entire match. But tennis rarely follows a simple script. Yastremska fired right back with the kind of fearless hitting she's known for. She broke serve and erased the lead. Suddenly, it was 5-5, and the momentum had flipped again. Now the pressure was back on Eala, and this was the first real test of her composure in the match, because instead of letting frustration creep in, she reset. She stayed patient. She waited for the right opportunities instead of forcing winners. And in the 12th game of the set, that patience paid off. Another break. First set to Alex Eala. But if anyone thought that meant the match was about to become comfortable, the second set immediately proved otherwise. Yastremska came out swinging. Literally, she broke serve in the opening game and started unleashing even bigger shots from the baseline. This is where her high-risk style becomes dangerous. When those shots start landing inside the lines, she can overwhelm almost anyone. And for a stretch of games, that's exactly what happened. She built a 4-1 lead, blasting winners and putting Eala constantly on the defensive. Now the match had flipped again. Eala did what smart players do in those moments.
She didn't panic.
Instead, she tried to slow things down, extend rallies, and force Yastremska to hit more balls. That approach helped her claw back a little momentum. She pushed the score to 4-3, giving herself a chance to fully get back into the set. But this time, Yastremska held her nerve with a few powerful service games and relentless attacking shots. She closed out the set and forced a deciding third. And now the match had reached the point where everything becomes psychological. Final sets are rarely just about tennis. They're about nerve, they're about endurance, and they're about who handles pressure better when the match is hanging by a thread. For a while, it looked like Yastremska might run away with it. Her serving became explosive again, and she started piling up aces. In total, she blasted 8 aces during the match. But there was another statistic quietly shaping the story. 15 double faults. That's the trade-off of her aggressive serving approach. When it works, it's devastating. When it breaks down, it opens the door for opponents. And Alex Eala walked right through that door. The set moved deep into the pressure zone. Game after game went by, neither player fully taking control. Then suddenly the scoreboard showed one of the most stressful situations a player can face. Eala was trailing 4-5, serving to stay in the match. This is the moment where many young players tighten up. The arm gets heavy. The decision-making becomes rushed. But something interesting happened instead. Eala played her best tennis of the entire match. She held serve confidently to make it 5-5. Then she attacked Yastremska's second serve returns, forcing errors and grabbing the break. Just like that, the momentum flipped again. Now, it was Eala serving for the match. And she didn't waste the opportunity. 3 straight games. Comeback complete. Final score 7-5, 4-6, 7-5. If you just read the scoreline, you might think it was simply a close match. But anyone who watched it knows it felt much bigger than that. Because this wasn't just about surviving one tough opponent. It was about proving something. Alex Eala showed she could handle momentum swings. She showed she could absorb power from an aggressive hitter. And most importantly, she showed she could close out a match under pressure. Those are the exact qualities players need to climb the WTA rankings. And here's where the story gets even more interesting. Because this win might be the perfect preparation for what comes next. Coco Gauff. If that name sounds intimidating, there's a good reason. Gauff has already established herself as one of the most complete players in the world. Her speed around the court is elite. Her defense can turn impossible rallies into winning points. And when she locks into her rhythm, she can make opponents feel like there's nowhere to hit the ball. Earlier this season, these two already faced each other at the Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships. That match was a difficult experience for Eala. Gauff dominated the rhythm from the baseline, constantly forcing Eala into defensive positions and shortening the rallies before the Filipina could dictate points. It was a clear lesson about the level required to beat top players. But here's the thing about tennis development. Players learn fast, and sometimes the matches that teach you the most are the losses. That's why this battle with Yastremska might matter more than it first appears, because stylistically Yastremska forced Eala into similar situations. Heavy baseline pressure, big returns, fast rallies. The difference this time was that Eala found solutions. She adjusted her positioning. She redirected pace more effectively, and she stayed mentally steady when the match started slipping away. Those are the exact adjustments she'll need against Gauff. Of course, beating a player of Gauff's caliber is a completely different challenge. The American thrives when rallies become predictable. She reads patterns incredibly well and uses her speed to turn defense into attack. If Eala wants to create a competitive rematch, she'll likely need to mix things up constantly. Angles, changes of pace, early attacks on shorter balls. Basically, anything that prevents Gauff from settling into comfortable baseline exchanges. And if Eala can bring the same resilience she showed against Yastremska, things could get interesting, because Indian Wells has a history of producing unexpected moments. Young players breaking through, favorites getting pushed further than anyone expected. And sometimes a match that looks predictable on paper becomes something entirely different once the first ball is struck. That's the mystery of tennis. But before we jump ahead to that showdown, there's one more thing worth talking about. Alex Eala's mindset. Over the past year, many tennis fans have been watching her progress closely. She's long been considered one of the most promising talents to come out of the Philippines. But transitioning from junior success to consistent wins on the WTA Tour is never simple. It requires patience. It requires physical development. And most of all, it requires learning how to win matches that get messy. This match against Yastremska was messy in the best possible way. Momentum swings, big errors, huge pressure moments, and yet Eala stayed composed enough to finish the job. Those are the matches that quietly build confidence inside a player's mind. The kind of matches where months later a player might think back and realize that was the moment something changed. Of course, it's still early. One victory doesn't suddenly transform a career. But if you're looking for signs of growth, this match had several. And now the stage is set for the next chapter. The rematch with Coco Gauff. Will the result be different this time? That's the question everyone is asking because tennis fans love redemption stories. They love seeing young players take lessons from past defeats and turn them into new opportunities. And if Alex Eala can push Gauff further than before, it might signal that she's getting closer to joining the sport's elite tier. But what do you think? Was this comeback a sign that Alex Eala is ready for bigger challenges? Or will Coco Gauff once again prove why she's one of the toughest players on tour? Jump into the comments and tell us your prediction for this rematch. And if you love deep tennis stories like this, stick around because here at Red Dust Report we don't just talk about scores. We break down the moments that shape the future of the sport. Thanks for watching Red Dust Report, and we'll see you in the next.